Meghan and Harry's California dream turned nightmare. This is the shocking story of how a royal couple, once seen as the underdogs in their battle for privacy, may have crossed every line they once fought against. How did their story go from fairy tale to scandal? Let's dive into the truth. Picture this. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, once hailed as the shining symbol of modern royalty, is now facing a crisis that has the potential to tear apart the very world she and her husband, Prince Harry, have carefully cultivated since their dramatic exit from the British royal family. Meghan, the woman who engineered one of the most audacious and history-making departures in royal history, now finds herself on the receiving end of something that, in many ways, symbolizes the collapse of her carefully crafted fairy tale. An eviction notice from her very own $14 million mansion nestled in the exclusive community of Montecito, California. The very home that was supposed to be her sanctuary, the place where she and Harry sought to build a new life, far away from the prying eyes of the British monarchy, is now at the center of an escalating legal battle. But this isn't just a petty squabble between a tenant and a landlord or a tabloid rumor blowing out of proportion. No, this is an official, formal eviction, something so rare and dramatic that it has sent shockwaves through not just their private lives, but the public's perception of them as well. In October of 2025, Meghan and Harry, two figures whose every move had been scrutinized under the media microscope, were served with a formal eviction notice for their Montecito estate. This legal action is not a simple disagreement over property lines or a minor dispute. It's a bold and extreme move that has shaken the celebrity world to its core. In a place like Montecito, where billionaires and Hollywood's elite live in the highest levels of discretion, to see a public figure like Meghan Markle, who had once seemed untouchable, forced out in this way is almost unfathomable. This isn't just a local issue confined to the quiet streets of Montecito. It has rippled across the global media landscape, fueling speculation and disbelief. For a couple who fled across the Atlantic seeking freedom from the confines of royal life, it raises profound questions. How did things spiral so out of control? How did the couple, who once embodied the notion of a fresh start and the triumph of privacy over public scrutiny, end up in this legal battle? What was once their sanctuary, a symbol of their reinvention, is now the epicenter of controversy. It's a shocking development that has sent waves of intrigue and curiosity through Hollywood and the media, rattling even the most well-known names in the entertainment industry. The couple who left behind the royal spotlight, hoping for peace and personal freedom, now find themselves thrust back into a different kind of public spectacle, one that has the potential to undo the very foundation of the carefully constructed persona they've worked so hard to build. This is the same couple who once made their dramatic escape from the UK, leaving behind the grand, historical palaces and the spotlight of royal life. They embarked on a journey across the Atlantic, not just in search of physical space, but a life free from the suffocating pressures of royal duties, constant public scrutiny, and the ever-watchful eye of the media. Their story of stepping away from their royal roles was framed as a quest for freedom, privacy, and most importantly, the opportunity to build a new life in America, one that would be free from the chains of tradition and expectation. At first, they presented themselves as victims of an unjust system, caught between their duty to the crown and their desire to live authentically. They painted a picture of themselves as the underdogs, fighting not just for their personal happiness, but for the right to control their own narrative. The royal family, they argued, was a world that had failed to protect them from the invasive media, and their move to America was meant to be a fresh start, a clean slate where they could raise their family in peace. However, fast forward just 5 years, and the idyllic California life they once envisioned has quickly unraveled. The freedom they sought has been replaced by the very kind of tension they hoped to escape. Instead of a quiet, peaceful sanctuary, their lives in Montecito, California, have become a battleground of public perception, media scrutiny, and even conflict with the very community that once embraced them. Their attempts to find privacy and freedom have been thwarted by new challenges, some of their own making, others the result of the heightened expectations placed on them as global figures. It's almost poetic, this turn of events. The very same forces they once fled, media attention, public judgment, and the relentless demands of their positions, have followed them across the ocean. The irony is SDR. They set out to claim their freedom, only to find themselves trapped in a new set of expectations, this time of their own choosing. The community that once welcomed them with open arms now finds itself at odds with them, as tensions rise over their actions, statements, and the way they have navigated their new life in America. It's a story that feels almost too perfect, too full of dramatic twists to be real, yet it's their reality now. What was meant to be a dream has become something far more complicated, a reminder that the search for peace and privacy is often not as simple as it seems. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. Despite the weight of the situation, the couple has remained eerily silent. Meghan, who has never shied away from controlling her narrative, who famously sat down for that bombshell interview with Oprah, launched her own podcast, and even produced Netflix documentaries to share her side of every story, has said absolutely nothing this time. Not a word. She, the woman who built an empire out of carefully curated media moments and personal revelations, is now conspicuously absent from the conversation. And Harry, the prince who famously bared his soul in his memoir Spare, has followed suit, remaining equally tight-lipped. No public statements, no press appearances, and certainly no carefully orchestrated crisis PR teams working around the clock to spin the narrative in a positive light. Instead, all we hear is silence. And it's that silence, rather than anything else, that has started to speak volumes. This quiet has an unsettling quality to it, an absence that only serves to raise more questions. What's going on behind the scenes that they're choosing not to reveal? What is so potentially damaging that even Meghan, who has spent years meticulously crafting her public image and speaking out at every turn, won't step forward to defend herself this time? Is this silence a strategic move, a way to let the storm pass, or is it a sign that the stakes are higher than anyone could have imagined? Meghan, who has always been eager to be seen and heard, has never been one to shy away from a fight. Yet here she is, staying out of the fray, leaving Harry to do the same. This unprecedented quiet raises the tension to new heights. What are they protecting? And why are they staying silent now, when their silence could be the loudest statement of all? Sources close to the situation claim that Harry is absolutely stunned by the rapid collapse of their California dream. He is reportedly blindsided by how quickly their once promising life in Montecito has come crashing down around them. This wasn't the life they envisioned. The peaceful sanctuary they dreamed of has quickly turned into a battleground. Both Harry and Meghan, it seems, never saw this coming. The idea of their haven being marred by tension and conflict was far from their minds when they made the decision to leave behind the royal spotlight and start anew in the United States. But now, what they once believed would be their escape has become their nightmare. What makes this whole situation even more bizarre, though, is the reason behind the eviction. This isn't about unpaid rent or some trivial property dispute that could be smoothed over with a handshake and a quick settlement. No, this is far darker and far more unsettling. At the heart of the matter is a disturbing pattern of invasive behavior that has left even the most privacy-conscious of their billionaire neighbors completely fed up. We're talking about drones, surveillance, and an aggressive disregard for the boundaries of those around them. This isn't just a case of celebrity antics or typical Hollywood drama. It's something more serious. The very tools meant to provide a sense of security, drones and surveillance, have become part of the problem. It seems that the desire for privacy and protection has come at the expense of everyone else's peace. Even the richest of the rich, people who go to extreme lengths to protect their own privacy, have had enough. This pattern of invasive behavior has pushed those neighbors to the brink, leading to what is now an explosive clash. The fact that such behavior has caused such a stir among the ultra-wealthy, People who have built entire empires on protecting their personal space, only makes the situation even more uncomfortable. What's truly unsettling is the realization that the very tools they once thought would give them freedom, surveillance, control, and technology, have instead turned against them, leading to a breach of the trust and peace they were seeking. The consequences are now all too clear, and it's left both Harry and Meghan grappling with a reality that no amount of media control or royal privilege could have prepared them for. So, what exactly is Meghan being accused of? The details are nothing short of shocking. According to multiple sources in Montecito, including actor Rob Lowe, who has lived in the area for decades, Meghan allegedly orchestrated a covert operation using drones to spy on her celebrity neighbors. This wasn't just the work of a casual hobbyist with a remote-controlled helicopter. These were professional-grade, high-tech unmanned aerial vehicles, drones equipped with high-resolution cameras, the kind typically reserved for film production, not backyard enthusiasts. Investigators believe these drones were intentionally deployed to capture private, intimate footage of A-list celebrities, without their knowledge or consent. Imagine the violation of privacy these residents must have felt, knowing their every move, in some cases, was being recorded from the sky. The thought of having such an advanced surveillance system flying over your property, aimed at capturing your most personal moments, is hard to even fathom. What's even more troubling is that this behavior wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a deliberate effort, a calculated move to invade the lives of others, with no regard for boundaries. The idea that someone, especially a public figure like Meghan, would go to such lengths to monitor and potentially manipulate the lives of her neighbors is a serious breach of trust. For those who were targeted, it's hard to imagine how intrusive and unsettling it must have been, constantly wondering if they were being watched without their knowledge. This kind of surveillance is not just invasive, it's illegal. The fact that it was allegedly orchestrated by someone with Meghan's public platform and influence only adds another layer of complexity to the situation. What's driving this behavior? And why go to such extreme lengths to spy on her neighbors? These are questions that investigators will surely be digging into as the case unfolds, and it leaves us wondering just how far Meghan was willing to go to get the kind of control and attention she craved. Rob Lowe recalled one particularly unsettling incident that left him shaken. He was hosting a family barbecue by his pool, enjoying a rare moment of privacy in his own backyard, when he noticed a drone hovering above him. Its camera was clearly aimed at him and his guests, capturing their every move. At first, Rob thought it might just be a random occurrence, but when he confronted nearby security personnel about the drone, they denied any knowledge of the situation. However, Rob wasn't buying it. His instincts told him this wasn't a one-time fluke. It was part of a disturbing pattern that had been happening for some time. Rob claims that drones would frequently drift over his property, hovering just long enough to capture footage, and then disappear back toward the Sussex estate. This wasn't an isolated case either. Other neighbors have reported eerily similar incidents. Drones would circle their pools, hover over their gardens, and film private gatherings, all while they assumed they were safely hidden from prying eyes. It seems that these high-tech intruders were everywhere, silently watching, without anyone knowing who was behind them. The fact that multiple residents, including celebrities accustomed to attention, were experiencing these strange drone encounters points to something far more deliberate and organized. It wasn't just a case of curiosity or a neighbor's innocent interest. It felt like an ongoing operation. To be constantly watched, to have your most private moments filmed without your consent, is a violation that goes beyond mere inconvenience. It creates an atmosphere of fear and suspicion, making it impossible to feel truly safe in your own home. For Rob and his neighbors, the realization that they were being watched, especially in their most personal, relaxed moments, must have been incredibly disorienting. It's hard to imagine how unsettling it must have been, knowing that a drone could be lingering just out of sight, capturing moments meant to be shared only with close family and friends. And to make matters worse, the fact that these drones seem to originate from the direction of the Sussex estate only deepens the mystery and suspicion surrounding Meghan and Harry's involvement. But what's even more calculated and disturbing is the suggestion that these drone flights weren't random at all. According to sources familiar with the investigation, the drones were specifically targeting certain high-profile residents in Montecito, names like Gwyneth Paltrow and Tyler Perry, among others. These are celebrities who not only command attention but whose involvement in Meghan's media ventures could provide significant value. The theory is chilling. Meghan may have been using these drones to capture candid, private footage of these high-profile neighbors, perhaps for her Netflix content, her social media, or even just to stockpile B-roll footage for future productions. This adds a whole new layer of complexity to the situation. It's not simply about an invasion of privacy. It's about a deliberate effort to exploit the lives of others for personal and professional gain. The idea that Meghan, who has so often spoken about the importance of her privacy, would resort to such invasive tactics to gain leverage is unsettling, to say the least. According to this theory, the drones weren't just a tool for gathering footage. They were part of a larger strategy to build a media empire at the expense of her neighbors' peace and privacy. Imagine the depth of the calculation here. Flying drones over people's private spaces, filming them without consent, all to potentially capture moments that could be used in a future documentary, podcast, or social media campaign. It's not just a violation of trust. It's a violation of the unwritten rules that govern how people interact with one another, especially in a community as close-knit and private as Montecito. For Meghan, it seems, the potential for content and media exposure was worth compromising the safety and comfort of her neighbors. What's even more chilling is the possibility that Meghan, who has spent so much of her public life carefully crafting an image of victimhood and personal empowerment, was allegedly willing to cross this line, invading the privacy of those around her in pursuit of her own media-driven ambitions. If this theory proves true, it paints a picture of someone willing to exploit any advantage, no matter the cost to others. It's a calculated and disturbing move, one that may have irreparably damaged the very relationships and reputation Meghan has worked so hard to build. Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) logs have reportedly uncovered over 15 incidents involving drones in the airspace surrounding the Sussex estate in 2024 and 2025. Each of these incidents could potentially be a violation of FAA regulations, which prohibit drones from entering private airspace without explicit permission. This is a serious issue, as it suggests a pattern of illegal surveillance, one that could have far-reaching consequences not only for Meghan and Harry, but also for the individuals behind the operation. What makes this situation even more alarming is the suggestion that some of the drones used in these surveillance operations were not just random or generic machines. Reports indicate that some of these drones allegedly bore markings that linked them to production companies associated with Archewell, the media foundation created by Meghan and Harry. Archewell has been behind multiple media projects, including their high-profile Netflix documentaries and podcast series, which raises troubling questions about the potential involvement of their own media company in orchestrating this invasion of privacy. If the connection between Archewell and the drones is confirmed, it would suggest that the Sussexes used their own media foundation to carry out covert surveillance on their neighbors. This opens up a whole new realm of ethical and legal concerns. Was this an attempt to gather footage for future productions, as some sources speculate? Or was it something more strategic, using their media foundation as a cover for what would otherwise be a highly illegal operation? The possibility that Meghan and Harry, who have consistently positioned themselves as champions of privacy and against invasive media practices, may have used their own media company to engage in such activities raises serious contradictions. It paints a picture of people willing to cross the very lines they have repeatedly denounced, all in the name of building their brand and securing content for their projects. This could not only damage their credibility, but also bring intense legal scrutiny on both them and their foundation. If this theory holds any truth, the implications are staggering. It could lead to investigations into potential breaches of privacy, violations of airspace regulations, and even legal action against the Sussexes or their media company. For now, though, the connection between the drones and Archewell remains under investigation, with many unanswered questions hanging in the air. This brings us to the heart of the hypocrisy that underpins the entire scandal. Back in 2020, Meghan and Harry filed a lawsuit against paparazzi who were using drones to capture photographs of them at their California home. Meghan, in particular, gave emotional testimony in court about how deeply violated she felt by these drone intrusions. She described how unsafe the drones made her feel, especially as a mother trying to protect her children, and how they stripped her of the privacy she deserved. In her eyes and in the public narrative they built, they were the victims of a media system that was willing to go to any lengths to invade their personal lives, even using surveillance technology to breach their privacy. Fast forward to today, and the irony is almost too much to ignore. These same individuals, Meghan and Harry, who once positioned themselves as outspoken champions of privacy, fighting against the invasive tactics of the paparazzi and media, are now allegedly using those very same tactics themselves. The surveillance, the drones, the violation of private space, they once condemned it in the strongest possible terms, yet now they are being accused of orchestrating it on a much larger and more calculated scale. How do we reconcile these two versions of events? On one hand, we have Meghan and Harry fighting for privacy, standing up against a media that they claim relentlessly encroaches on their personal lives. On the other hand, we have allegations that they themselves may have used these invasive techniques to spy on their neighbors, potentially to gather content for their media projects. The contradiction is stark, and it doesn't just raise questions about their actions. It also calls into question the integrity of their public stance on privacy. For many, this shift from victimhood to alleged perpetrator is deeply troubling. How could the couple that decried drone surveillance as an invasion of privacy, an unsafe and unethical practice, now be accused of using drones to spy on their own neighbors? It's a massive blow to their narrative, a narrative they've spent years carefully crafting to win public sympathy and support. The discrepancy between their past words and their alleged actions now casts a long shadow over their credibility, leaving the public to wonder, can we trust what they say when their actions seem to contradict their own message? This isn't just a contradiction. It's a full-scale collapse of the carefully constructed narrative Meghan and Harry have been building for years. Since stepping away from their royal roles, they've spent their post-royal lives positioning themselves as champions of privacy, victims of a media culture that they claim relentlessly sought to destroy them. They've painted themselves as defenders of personal space, fighting against the prying eyes of the paparazzi and the invasive media tactics that have stalked them since their relationship began. This narrative has been central to their brand, helping them garner sympathy and support from fans who saw them as the ultimate underdogs, trying to escape a system that abused their fame. And now, that very narrative has been completely and utterly undermined by the actions they've been accused of. The very tactics they once railed against, the surveillance, the media intrusion, the violation of privacy, are now allegedly being used by them. The hypocrisy is not just noticeable, it's glaring. It's hard to ignore the irony of a couple that fought so passionately to protect their own privacy, now being accused of invading the privacy of others on an even larger scale. What was once a moral high ground has now crumbled, revealing a much more complex and uncomfortable truth. And social media hasn't been shy about pointing it out. The internet has exploded with commentary, memes, and discussions, with people from all walks of life calling out the couple for their hypocrisy. The very platforms that Meghan and Harry have used to tell their side of the story are now full of critics who are quick to remind them of their own contradictions. People are no longer simply sympathizing with them. They're questioning their motives, their actions, and their ability to hold on to any moral authority in this situation. The public perception of the couple, once largely sympathetic and even somewhat supportive, is now rapidly shifting. And the backlash online is a clear indicator that the narrative they've worked so hard to build has fractured in a way that may be difficult to repair. As the scandal continues to unfold, it's clear that the damage to their public image is far from over. Their credibility has been deeply compromised, and the trust they've tried to build with their audience is now in jeopardy. The couple that couldn't stand being watched is now under intense scrutiny, and social media isn't letting them forget it. Legal experts have weighed in on the situation, pointing out the staggering irony that Meghan and Harry, who once invoked California's anti-paparazzi laws to protect their privacy, may now be facing violations of those very laws. These regulations were specifically designed to shield celebrities from invasive surveillance tactics, such as the drone surveillance they are now accused of conducting. The laws were created with the goal of preventing the kind of privacy violations Meghan and Harry themselves had once decried, as they fought against relentless media intrusion that they claimed endangered their safety and stripped them of their privacy. Yet now, the couple finds themselves at the center of accusations involving exactly the kind of invasive behavior they once publicly condemned. The hypocrisy in this situation is almost too much to bear, as the very laws they sought refuge in may now turn against them. However, the legal and moral inconsistencies surrounding the couple's actions are just one piece of a much larger and more pressing issue: their financial crisis. On the surface, Meghan and Harry's combined net worth of $60 million seems substantial enough to maintain a lavish lifestyle, one befitting a couple that has traded the royal spotlight for a life in the public eye. The wealth they've accumulated through various media deals, book advances, and speaking engagements should theoretically allow them to live comfortably, covering the costs of their luxurious $14 million estate, private security teams, designer wardrobes, and extravagant travel, including the use of private jets. But the truth is far less glamorous. When you factor in the ongoing maintenance of their lifestyle, those millions begin to dwindle much faster than one might expect. The couple's financial troubles are becoming increasingly apparent as the reality of their situation sets in. While they once seemed poised for financial success after stepping away from royal life, the income they've generated has not been nearly enough to support the high-end lifestyle they've grown accustomed to. Their Netflix deal, which was heralded as a major coup for the couple, has turned out to be far less lucrative than initially expected. The original reports suggested that the deal was worth a staggering $100 million, a figure that created the impression that the Sussexes were financially set for life. In reality, the actual payout from Netflix has been closer to $20 million, far less than what they had hoped. Even more concerning is the fact that this contract is set to expire in 2025, and with no renewal on the horizon. Netflix executives have made it clear that they are not interested in continuing the partnership, citing the underperformance of the projects and the increasing reputational damage surrounding the Sussex brand. Their content, which was supposed to capture the attention of millions, has largely fallen flat, leaving Netflix questioning whether the deal was worth the investment. To make matters worse, their Spotify deal, which was meant to complement the Netflix deal and provide another lucrative revenue stream, has already fallen apart. The podcasting project that was supposed to elevate their media presence and generate consistent income has failed to live up to expectations. With no significant revenue coming from these two high-profile platforms, Meghan and Harry find themselves in a precarious financial situation. What was once seen as a blueprint for financial independence and a thriving media empire is now looking like a series of missteps, leading them to a crossroads with few options left. In addition to the fading prospects from Netflix and Spotify, the couple faces mounting pressure to maintain their public image. Their media ventures have not only failed to bring in the expected revenue, but their reputation has taken a hit as well. The controversies surrounding their privacy violations and their shifting public personas have turned away potential partners, leaving them vulnerable in an industry that thrives on brand consistency and a favorable public image. Without major revenue streams or the backing of these lucrative deals, Meghan and Harry are staring down a financial cliff. The couple's ability to maintain their lavish lifestyle, the expensive security, the private jets, the designer clothes, the sprawling estate, is now in jeopardy. The money that once seemed abundant is vanishing, and the pressure to maintain appearances is growing. They are facing the harsh reality that their brand, once seen as a new form of celebrity empowerment, is now faltering under the weight of its contradictions. The empire they hoped to build in the media industry, the one that would allow them to step away from the royal spotlight while still maintaining a life of luxury, seems to be crumbling. And without significant changes, they risk not just reputational damage, but a financial collapse that could affect every aspect of their lifestyle. As the Sussexes grapple with these mounting challenges, it's clear they are running out of options. The revenue streams that they once relied upon to fuel their high-end existence are drying up, and the future of their media ventures looks uncertain. The reality of their financial situation is becoming undeniable, and the pressure to turn things around before it's too late is only intensifying. The once promising future they had envisioned after leaving royal life now seems much more precarious, with every decision carrying the weight of their financial survival hanging in the balance. Meghan's podcast, Archetypes, was hailed as a groundbreaking project when it was first announced, with a massive promotional push and high hopes for success. Yet, despite the initial excitement and the star-studded guests, the podcast quickly faltered. It failed to capture the public's long-term interest, struggling to maintain its momentum after its first few episodes. What was meant to be an empowering platform for Meghan to explore societal expectations placed on women ended up being just another media venture that didn't live up to expectations. The podcast, like many of their other projects, didn't bring in the kind of revenue they had anticipated, leaving the Sussexes facing a harsh reality. Their media empire wasn't the financial success they had hoped for. Her children's book, The Bench, was another attempt to create a lasting legacy. The book, which Meghan described as a personal reflection on her relationship with Harry and their son Archie, initially attracted attention for its heartfelt premise. However, the book didn't live up to the commercial success that was expected. While it sold copies, it didn't have the same lasting impact or mass appeal of other successful children's books, and it certainly didn't generate the kind of income Meghan and Harry had hoped for. What they had envisioned as a long-term revenue stream turned out to be another brief moment of public attention that failed to translate into sustained financial growth. For Harry, the release of his memoir Spare was a defining moment in his post-royal life. The book generated a lot of buzz, with strong initial sales as the world eagerly awaited the prince's personal story and his take on life inside the royal family. The memoir certainly brought in a large sum up front, but like most memoirs, it was a one-time cash infusion. It didn't offer the kind of long-term financial stability they needed to maintain their lifestyle. The reality of memoirs, especially ones filled with controversial and personal revelations, is that they rarely lead to sustained revenue. After the initial sales, interest wanes, and Harry's book was no exception. While it made headlines for a period, it didn't provide a foundation for consistent income. Meanwhile, their Archewell Foundation, which Meghan and Harry hoped would be their lasting philanthropic legacy, has struggled to gain traction in the way they envisioned. They positioned Archewell as a beacon of positive change, tackling issues such as mental health, social justice, and climate change. However, despite their best efforts, the foundation has faced challenges in attracting major donors and securing ongoing funding. With their media ventures taking a hit and Archewell failing to generate the kind of widespread support they had anticipated, the couple finds themselves in a precarious financial position. For a couple who consistently emphasized their commitment to charitable work and social causes, the inability to draw in substantial philanthropic backing has been a major setback. On top of these mounting challenges, the couple's reputation has taken a hit due to the ongoing controversies surrounding their personal lives. Allegations of bullying against Meghan and the growing tensions within their Montecito neighborhood have only added to the complications they face. Their neighbors, once embracing the couple with open arms, have now become increasingly frustrated by the Sussexes' actions, particularly the allegations of surveillance. The irony of it all is rich. Meghan and Harry, who fled to California to escape the invasive nature of the media, are now at the center of accusations that they themselves used invasive surveillance tactics on their neighbors. All of these factors, failing media projects, a struggling foundation, and a growing public backlash, are now part of the complex financial picture that the Sussexes are facing. The couple's attempts to craft a new life outside of the royal family, filled with lucrative media deals and a social justice platform, have not panned out as expected. In fact, it has become increasingly clear that their financial stability is not as secure as it once seemed. Now, it all starts to make sense. In light of these financial struggles and the mounting pressure to maintain their luxurious lifestyle, allegations have surfaced suggesting that Meghan and Harry were desperate for content, any content, that could potentially save their faltering media ventures. They needed something to keep the revenue flowing, to turn the tide of their failing projects, and to salvage their brand before it crumbled completely. They were not just looking for content, but for ways to generate media that could be marketed, sold, and turned into profit. The pressure to produce something, anything, that could generate the attention and income they so desperately needed became overwhelming. According to sources, this desperation led them to engage in covert surveillance of their neighbors, celebrities who lived nearby in Montecito. These neighbors were high-profile A-list figures, people like Gwyneth Paltrow and Tyler Perry, whose involvement in the Sussexes' media projects could potentially add immense value. The theory is that Meghan and Harry sought to capture behind-the-scenes footage of these celebrities, footage that could be used in documentaries, social media campaigns, or future Netflix productions. The footage, if it could be obtained, could be sold, marketed, and potentially help keep their media empire afloat. In a sense, they were looking for any way to generate content to keep their brand relevant and profitable. The idea that the couple, once vocal about their opposition to invasive media practices, may have resorted to using these very tactics to survive financially is both shocking and deeply ironic. The same individuals who fought against paparazzi and media intrusion are now allegedly using surveillance to gather content for their own gain. It's a stark, calculated move driven by the need to preserve their lifestyle, but one that threatens to destroy the very principles they once championed. In their desperation, Meghan and Harry seemed willing to cross moral lines they had previously denounced, violating the privacy of others to save their sinking media ventures. The irony and hypocrisy of this situation are glaring, and it's clear that their quest to maintain a life of wealth, fame, and influence has led them to make decisions that could have far-reaching consequences for both their personal lives and their professional reputations. The desperation is palpable, and the fallout from these actions could continue to haunt them for years to come. So, what's next for Meghan and Harry? Will they continue to fight for their place in the media world, or have they already lost their chance at redemption? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe these accusations, or is it just a smear campaign? And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on this unfolding story. Stay tuned because this saga is far from over.